Sennheiser. They make headphones, we all know that, but did you know they also make IEMs? You probably did. Well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But they don't just make the fancy wireless earbuds that you put in your little ears and you can connect to your little phone with the Bluetooth, but they also make some primo bona fide audiophile grade earbuds. Now, Sennheiser has not really received a ton of acclaim for their earbuds in the past, but with the recent revisions and additions to their new lineup, their IE600s have been very, very, very well received, and we're hoping to see success with the IE200s. You have the IE600s, which I believe are around $1,000. I'm gonna check that right now. And you have the IE900s, which are at like $2,000. But these cost about a fifth of the price of those IE600s. But are they gonna be 1/5 as good, or are they gonna blow me away? Well, there's only one way to find out. Now, what's a little surprising to me is that Sennheiser, they have the brand name recognition to charge a hefty premium for a lot of their audio products because people will buy them just by trusting the brand name alone. But you're smarter than that. You're here to find out if they're actually worth your time, and I'm ready to go on that journey with you. So, let's take a look at the outside of the box. One thing Sennheiser doesn't, seems to skimp out on is premium packaging. Maybe the IE600s were far more fancy, but this is just a pretty cheap, very thin cardboard box. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just headphones. You're gonna take them out of the box and you're gonna throw away the box. So, who really cares? Looking at the box, a nice picture on the front featuring the IEMs themselves, a new world of high fidelity sound. Yeah, okay, Sennheiser. Technical data. We have a 6 Hz to 20 kHz response. The SPL is 119 dB with an impedance of 18 ohms. These should be relatively easy to drive with the high impedance being cut out by the very high sensitivity. And total harmonic distortion is less than 0.08%. So far below the threshold of human hearing when it comes to detecting distortion. All really good. Let's take them out and take a look. I opened these already. But the only difference is that they were wrapped in this a lot nicer than they were when they just came out now. But don't worry about it. In here we have our headphones, and in here we got ear tips, our little pouch. That's a very little pouch. Oh boy. All right, we got some reading material. And a tasty, scrumptious morsel. Multiple different types of ear tips. Now the ear tips with these are kind of interesting. Now these ear tips are a little different than usual because they contain a filter in them. So in each of these earbuds, it's pretty tough to see. There's like foam on the inside of these. We're gonna take it out of the big ones. There's this little piece of foam. So the role of these filters are twofold. One is that they actually do affect the sound, and two, they prevent stuff from getting into the driver. There is probably going to be, on the headphones, there will probably be another like layer to prevent things from touching the driver itself, another filter on the inside of the earbud. Also, the inside of these kind of have a harder plastic almost. They're not, or a more structured rubber, or a more structured silicone. It's very tough to get the angle. On the inside, you can see that there's like 2 different lines. So that little lip in there allows for their patent pending dual tuning system, where basically it allows you to put an ear tip on at 2 different positions. So here, we'll take the wires off. So here you have the driver just by itself. And then you can put it on like that, where there's this significant gap between the, so here you can see that there's a significant gap between the edge of the actual ear tip and the driver body. That allows for what they call dual tuning. And then if you press it in all the way, it's at its second tuning profile, or I guess maybe its normal tuning profile. I'm skeptical, to say the least. Is it really a feature putting your ear tips on wrong? Like that's kind of what they did, is that they said, oh, well, sometimes have you ever like not put your ear tips on all the way on your drivers and then you notice that they sound different? And they were like, yeah, that's a feature, baby. It's just a weird feature. But let's talk about the drivers. Let's talk about the IEMs themselves. We're gonna put some stuff away. Put that phone back where it came from, or so help me. Okay, we're gonna toss them in our little, I'm actually gonna take this opportunity to swap out to the smaller ear tips since I believe they fit me best. I found the small foam ones to be the most comfortable, but obviously it's all very personalized to you. Right here we have the gold-plated MMCX connector, And in each earbud, you have a single 7mm dynamic driver. So one driver has to handle everything from their quoted 6 hertz to 20,000 hertz. And that is not always an easy task. Most speakers that you see have 2 drivers in them. They have a dynamic driver, usually referred to as a woofer, and then they have something called a tweeter, which is basically a second driver meant to handle very high frequencies. You don't need those 2 drivers when it comes to headphones because you don't have to push nearly as much air. That's where bigger speakers come in, right? If you need to push a lot of air at a low frequency, it takes a lot of energy, which is why subwoofers tend to have really, really big drivers, but you don't need to. And with headphones, because they're pushing such a small amount of air, you can get by with just one driver. Many companies will use multi-driver setups with balanced armatures or just other dynamic drivers, but that tends to introduce complexity and cost. Now, you can find multi-driver setups at the price point that these are at, but it's neither here nor there. A well-tuned single driver can perform just as well as any multi-driver setup you could imagine. We haven't even talked about the cable. Oh boy, the cable. We have a braided cable that honestly sucks. Like, it's honestly an insult. But you're paying a decent amount for these headphones, and look at this. This is the cinch. So it's like the cheapest piece of like plastic tubing. It's like they cut like some sort of straw. Like that's really all you give. I've seen better cables on $20 headphones. I don't mind this ear hook mechanism. I think it's good. Now the strain relief on the bottom of the cable is pretty good. Same with up here. Maybe it's a little lacking. Like, I would worry about this connection between the ear hook and the rest of the cable. That's a little flimsy. But the MMCX connectors do just fine in holding the earbuds in place. This is supposed to be the left earbud. Now, I like MMCX connectors. I don't really care for 2-pin connectors because they don't allow for the rotation of the earbud like an MMCX connector does. And there's like 4 different types of 2-pins that are like slightly further apart than one another, and it makes shopping for spare cables kind of annoying. MMCX, every spare cable kind of works together, except for Sennheiser. Because what does Sennheiser do? They add this extra little lip. It's on both of them. They add this extra little lip. There's the connector, and then there's a little cutout, and then there's the rest of the thing. And that little cutout allows them to put this little cuff. See how there's that depth between that and the connector? It allows for them to put that in, which makes it so that your MMCX cable that you might already own is not compatible. You have to buy the Sennheiser cable. And do you know how much the improved Sennheiser cable costs? It costs like 99 euro for the better Sennheiser cable. That's like the price of this thing. That's like a whole other thing. And the worst part is this cable's noisy as f. It's in your ears, and everything that touches it goes directly into your ears. You're wearing a zipper, these are unlistenable because of it. It's an absolute travesty. But listen, if these sound pristine, I could always buy a new cable, right? So how do they sound? Well, they sound like a great deal from our sponsor. Thanks to Newegg for sponsoring this video. Looking for the latest technology to upgrade your gaming rig, home office, or entertainment setup? Look no further than Newegg. As one of the largest online retailers of computer hardware, software, and electronics, Newegg has everything you need to take your digital life to the next level. They offer competitive prices, fast and reliable shipping, 30-day hassle-free returns, and excellent customer service to ensure that you have the best shopping experience possible. So whether you're a tech enthusiast, gamer, or just looking for the latest gadgets, Newegg is the go-to destination for all your tech needs. Check out Newegg at lmg.gg/Newegg. Today I'm going to be taking a listen on my FiO audio player. It's a very nice, high-quality DAC, very powerful too, can drive pretty much anything. It's significantly better than the Sony Walkman that we covered on this channel. Well, I don't know, maybe not in audio quality, but in terms of it actually being able to drive headphones, it's substantially better. Sennheiser's whole idea behind this dual tuning thing is that the second tuning mode will provide you with a more critical listening experience. So sometimes if you're an instrumentalist on stage, you might want to be able to hear some of the higher notes to make sure that you're playing correctly. It doesn't need to really sound nice for you. It needs to sound nice for the audience, but you need to know exactly what you're playing. Well, Sennheiser's right, it does change the sound. It is a different tuning, but that tuning sounds like garbage. Do you want your bass to sound anemic? Do you want your highs to be piercing and brittle? Do you want exclusively detail and no oomph? Well, that's the tuning for you. But when you push them in all the way, they sound so goddamn good. Incredible. Like, there's a nice rumble to the sub bass that it's not totally overwhelming. It doesn't carry over or blur the mids when we move up into the bass. It's detailed. It's very detailed, but not in a terribly fatiguing way. Some mixes on some songs I found it to be a little much, especially on very sibilant sounds like those S's and T's coming from vocalists who maybe over enunciate, or on some metal tracks with some poorly mixed double kicks. Things can sound a little wonky on these, but from my experience, that's a failure of the recordings that I'm testing out rather than a failure of the headphones. These headphones don't add a ton of color. These don't really have like a signature sound. Like they don't go like, oh yeah, you know, that sounds like Focal has a nice tradition of laid back highs. These don't have it. These are great for clinical listening. They're also fun. Like that sub bass rumble is great. I could see some people being a little disappointed by the lack of mid bass where things don't feel quite as lively or boomy, but they never feel dead. They always feel alive and thumping. And they sound great, especially at the price. So what does the machine say? Well, looking at our frequency response graph, we can see that the IE200s, the blue line, line up quite nicely with our target curve. We can see a rise in the bass. We can see it following very nice through the mids, a little bit of a dip in the 500 hertz range, but I never really found it perceptible. Maybe on occasion, some lower vocalists felt a little recessed, but not really. It does get a little bit higher in the upper mids, where at the 1000 hertz range, we start to see it deviate and go a little bit above the curve. Things can get a little shouty in that region. I never noticed it on these headphones. Again, I think these sound great. What I'm kind of surprised by is I've always found our target to not be super clinical and relatively laid back. And the only spike I'm really seeing above our target is at the 14 kilohertz region, which is like really at the edge of my hearing. I can only hear it around the 16,000 hertz is where my hearing stops. And when you're really up in these really high sounds, it's hard to control it. We tried to get the measurements in the dual tuned position, but we couldn't seat this in our testing apparatus without pushing in the ear tip all the way. So you'll have to take my word that it sounds like ass. Now, at $150, what you are getting is honestly just incredible sound. If you're somebody who wants to dip their toes into the world of audio and wanna understand what people mean when they say like that neutral sound or critical listening headphones, these are a great place to start. They're not gonna be off-putting, they're very welcoming, they're very easy to drive, and they sound amazing. But they come with a cable that's worth less than nothing, so. If you're somebody who doesn't wanna go with, like, you wanna go with a established brand rather than a Chi-Fi option. Chi-Fi meaning Chinese high fidelity. These are really, really great. This is really, really bad. If you like this video, why don't you check out Linus's unboxing of their older brother, the IE600s. He loved them so much, he made me search for them for 2 hours, because he lost them.